So we are going to get started with today's webinar. For those of you who haven't been on these webinars before, the format is, because it's a live webinar, is we will do the presentation and go over that. And then at the end of the webinar, after the presentation, I would typically take questions and answers that can be about this topic, or they can be about anything that really pertains to your career. And really, you should feel free to, as you're watching, write down any questions that you may have, as well as anything that you're thinking about that you'd like to talk about with your career and have questions answered. You can ask those as well when we start. Yeah, so we're going to get started with this particular topic. I want to say just at the outset with this particular topic is I personally feel this may be one of, if not the most important presentation that you hear in your entire legal profession. And I really mean that. If you understand what I'm going to be talking about today, and you take notes and you are prepared to really look at this and take your defenses down and understand what I'm talking about, this can be an incredibly valuable presentation, not only from the perspective of your life as an attorney or whatever you go into, but also your personal life as well. And very important. The wording of this says need to be exploited to succeed, but it's actually far more than that. And what I'm going to be talking about today, this topic is exactly what partners do that end up getting huge books of business. It's what associates do that become partners. It's what people do that start their own businesses outside of law that makes them successful. It's really one of the most important topics that you will ever listen to, because of every attorney that I've ever seen succeed, almost every person that I've ever seen succeed with a pure consciousness and heart has really understood this concept that I'm really talking about today. It's extremely important. There's just so much to this topic that I really can't underestimate and understress it. And if you do really understand what I'm talking about today, you take your own life and you examine what you've done so far and how you can change based on this topic, it's going to be a complete game changer for you. This particular topic I've seen with people that are the happiest, that are the most successful, that are able to hold on to success, meaning they keep success going even when other people would give up. It is hugely important. And I'm very excited to talk to you about this today. And I'm also excited for what your life could become and your career could become once you implement these things. This is one of those topics where people that I've taught this to, people that have read things about articles and that I've done have contacted me years, and in some cases decades after being exposed to this, and told me that it actually was one of the most profound lessons that they ever had. And I'm not saying that I'm the giver of this lesson, and it has come from other places, and I've heard it before in different ways, which I'll talk about today. But this topic is just a great topic for you to understand, or for everyone to understand, no matter what your background. So a lot of this particular topic really is something that prevents so many attorneys from being successful. It happens often very early in their career when they're associates, or some are associates. It can happen later in their career when they're partners. But one of the big things is that a lot of times attorneys will get hung up on the idea of whether or not they're being taken advantage of by their employers, meaning they think that practicing law is a game. When they're looking for a position, they want to get paid as much as possible for working as little as possible. That's their goal. And they're continually evaluating employers based on how many hours am I going to have to work? What am I going to get paid? All these sorts of things. What kind of percentage of the profits are you going to pay me as a partner? People are always evaluating employers based on this metric. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm going to tell you the problem is with that, because if you're constantly looking for someone who's better than you, you're never going to settle down and have a good career. You're going to just be far less successful than you want to be, and you're always going to be unhappy. I was hearing someone, I just like watching these fun TikTok videos before I go to bed, and I was watching one last night where this person was saying, in order to have a good relationship with the opposite sex, you need to be able to tolerate fights on and on all the time, like just disagreements. And the people that can't do that will always leave when there's some problem. And they often spend their whole lives doing that. So if you're going to evaluate every employer based on these little metrics all the time, you're never going to be able to settle down. You're never going to be unhappy. You're never going to be happy. And you're always going to have problems. It's just because no one is perfect. No firm is ever going to pay the most. No firm is ever going to have whatever it is you're looking for the most. And it's going to be very difficult for you. A lot of attorneys go in-house where they can be less accountable for their time. Lots become solo practitioners, and then they often don't do well with that. And then a lot of people will just quit all the time because they say that the system is exploitative and bad. But there's people out there, a lot of them, you may be one of them, because frankly, most of the people that watch these webinars are from the biggest firms and the small firms too, but very successful already. And I wonder, why that is. But I think a lot of it has to do with you get information and you do this. But the most successful lawyers, they tend to trust the system will take care of them. They believe that if they do their best, the system will work out for them. They just trust it. They're not playing quid pro quo all the time. They're not constantly unhappy. And in most organizations, you need to understand, it doesn't matter if it's a law firm, it doesn't matter what it is. There's always a conflict between advancing those who give it their all and then holding back those who don't. That's the conflict. It's interesting too, like there was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday where they were saying that people that are coming in the office and being seen and not working remotely are far less likely, like by a multiple, to get laid off than those people that aren't seen in the office that are remote. People want to see people working. They want to see people giving it their all. And a lot of attorneys, by the way, are held back because they don't want to be taken advantage of. They're worried that will hurt them. And this paranoia about people taking advantage of you in relationships, meaning you're giving more than the person's giving you, is going to affect you professionally and just personally and whatever you do. This whole psychology is dangerous. And if you believe that the giving that you're giving more to the firm outweighs your pay, very much is something that attorneys worry about. They look for shortcuts and ways to game the system so others and not them are taken advantage of. And the problem with this attitude is that people avoid people who don't provide much value. If your employer expects you to come into the business office because they want to see people there, they want to talk to you during the day, they want to see you working, they want to see you learning with their employees, they're going to hold that against you. If you believe that you need to make every last dime from your employer, they're going to avoid you. If they believe that if they gave you extra work, you're going to expect a raise or something, they're going to be avoided. If friends that you're dealing with make them feel like they need to give more than they're taking and so forth, these type of people will often end up alone and they'll be unhappy. And the takers and not the givers are people that run into troubles. Now, I realize what I've said so far may sound a little bit harsh. And what I am going to do is I'm going to give a lot of explanations to make sure that this all makes sense. And I'm going to show you how you actually giving gives you far more than being in a state of taking. So all this is going to make sense. But again, this particular psychology is something that the most successful lawyers, people in every business pretty much understand. So there's a statement, it's Egyptian magic face cream, I think. And it says that life takes from the taker and gives to the giver. And what is giving meaning other than giving much more than you take? Because the more you give, typically, the more you receive. The more you concentrate in providing, the more you will see. All great entrepreneurs, all great businesses are able to provide value that's far more than people are paying. It becomes a non-brainer. And so people do business with them. And most people that have issues in their personal and financial lives, they believe that people will take advantage of them if they give too much, meaning they're too whatever. They don't think things will work out if they give too much. So I knew a man retired in his mid-50s, and he had this belief that he was very strong on, that women in relationship to him, he was divorced when he retired, should be an equal contributors, that if he gave something, then they should give something back. And it was a continuous power struggle to get equal affection or equal financial contributions. And this attitude left this man because he approached his finances that way. He approached his job when he was working that way. And he had relationships that way, that, with other men. And so he's literally had a very lonely life. And problems in relationships and others. And this is an example of someone that's very hung up on that. But a lot of people are like this. They're like this with their employers. And most young attorneys and most even older attorneys that are jumping around between firms and stuff constantly, this is the problem that they're running into. They're not being advanced because they're not giving enough. They're not getting business because they're only giving with the expectation of getting something in return. They're not. All these things are what are hurting and holding them back. And the opposite of that is someone that does the opposite and does very well. And I'll talk about that in a few moments. But if you evaluate your life and experience on these terms, it's going to lead to problems and many issues. And your ability to give at work and your work ethic are going to be directly proportionate to being able to give more than you take and provide extra value. That's just the name of the game. You need to be in your job. You need to be not thinking of doing the minimum. You need to be doing the extra, because if you're doing the minimum, someone else is doing more. And if you're giving more, someone else is doing more than even you, meaning they're thinking through things. They're proofreading things. They're analyzing things from different issues. They're catching errors that other people won't. That's extra value. And the more extra value you provide, the more you're going to look like a good attorney. And everywhere you turn, you see this kind of conflict about people not being able to give more than they take. It happens at every employer, and every day it's all around you. There's always people that are seeking to have work done, and they want the work done well. And then there's people that are trying to gain the system and get as much and get paid as much as possible for doing as little work as possible. They may come and think, oh, this assignment wasn't explained well enough. This assignment is outside my area of scope. I'm not comfortable with this assignment. You're asking me to do something that I don't agree with. All these sorts of things are excuses that people come up with. There are people in every company where if you sign them work, or law firm, they will come back with more questions and reasons not to do the work than just putting down their foot and getting it done. There are people like this. There are people that if you ask them to do an assignment, they will come back and do far more than expected, do it far better than expected, and help the person get in the assignment far better than expected. And this is how it works. So this is just an example of kind of how people work. And you see it all around you. And I'm just giving you this example because I'm trying to show you how this kind of plays out in life. So I recently went on vacation. When I left, there was a maintenance man in my house. He offered to take care of my dogs and stay in my house while I was gone. He was in charge of doing ongoing work. So every week he did things like cut the plants and just different things. He was in the process of doing some painting and a bunch of things, but that's the work that he normally is supposed to do. And when I returned home after a week, he hadn't done any of the ongoing work. And he stayed in the house watching the dogs, watching television. And he worried that if he did both for me at his daily rate, I'd be taking advantage of him. That's what he said to me. So he just lounged around the house all day, watched television, walked on the beach and enjoyed himself and didn't work. And he figured that was a fair trade. So people are making these sort of calculations all the time. If I do one thing, I won't do another. If I do this, I won't do another. They're unfair practices, and you're going to be surrounded by them everywhere you go. And I'm giving you another example. Not too long ago, I went on vacation. And when I was there, I met a couple that had come close to a divorce in the past year. And the wife had become the breadwinner. And the husband spent the past couple of years not working and finding himself. And after so much time not working, the woman felt that she was being taken advantage of and exploited. And she felt the man needed to go back to work. And one partner felt taken advantage of by the other. And by the way, this particular situation seems, to whatever reason, never work out. Sometimes the man will sit home and start drinking. But it just, when people feel like they're being taken advantage of, they often are unhappy. And that's just the case. And then another vacation not too long ago, I went to Cabo San Lucas, which is pretty easy to get to from Los Angeles. And there was a concierge and we had all these people trying to take advantage of us by inflating the cost of services. So there were 2 bottles of champagne in the fridge when we arrived. And we asked for a brand that was $30 a bottle. Instead, they brought a brand that was $100 a bottle, which isn't something obviously that we wanted to spend. And then they said it had been refrigerated and wouldn't allow us to return it. And then we found the same brand in a store for $60. And so they marked it up, which I guess isn't the end of the world. And then when we got massages, they told us to tip the people 20%. units more. Then we went to a hotel room. We're told credit card machine was not working and I need to pay in cash. So they walked us over to that. And that particular thing that they were doing there, just so you understand, is they wanted to keep the cash and not have to give the money to give the tips to the hotel. So they made us do that. And none of this made any sense because in the hotel, we were able to use credit cards and the staff could easily have used that credit card machine. And this is the trick people use. So that's taken advantage of. And facials, tips put on there of $150 for a facial. This is just another example. People putting tips in, and then after I said that was too much of a tip, then they put in $80. Then it was time for me to leave. The concierge came in and asked for a large tip and looked over me while I was paying it. And then also told me I should tip the maids a certain amount for each day. So it's an example of just people trying to get more. And I'm not certainly against workers trying to expect tips and things, but all these ways people are trying to extract value without a corresponding amount of giving. But in my case, why would you go back to that hotel? Why would you feel comfortable going there again? And you would go someplace where these games are played. These same sorts of games happen with attorneys in law firms. They try to figure out ways to get bigger bonuses. They try to figure out all these things. And in law firms every year, there are people that start in October and then Christmas bonuses are handed out and they're mad that they didn't get a bonus. Or they're bad that their bonus wasn't as much as other people in other firms got, even though they might be at a smaller firm. Not these sorts of things, and playing these games is not always the best route to having a good career. The idea of what I'm just talking about, and I'm trying to use the example of the hotel and so forth so you can have a little bit of understanding of how this works, is that people try to get things for providing less value than they receive all the time. And when people do this, what happens is other people will avoid them. They don't want to do business with them. And I don't even want to go to Mexico again because of this experience, because I felt taken advantage of. So this, by the way, is what law firms do as well with the people working there. This is another example of a relative I have. He has this religion that requires him to go to give religion all of his money. And I expected this person is expected to work for this firm for free for long hours, and then also give the money he makes from his regular job to them. And literally to live near poverty level to support this organization. And everyone's trying to convince him he's being exploited. And the religion keeps bullying him into giving him all this time and money. There are cases like that where people will take a lot more from us and exploit us. It's true. It can happen in law firms. If you go to a law firm and there's absolutely no future there, there's no future for anyone, and they're expecting you to work these incredible long hours, then that may be something you need to protect yourself against. I'm going to talk about that too. But this particular religion, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's got a horrible reputation all over the world. And mainly it's because it takes more than it gives from the people. And because it does that, movies are made about it, and television shows are made about it, and books are written about how bad it is. And it all comes from the idea of taking more than they give. You have to think about your life too. So I'm not saying that you should necessarily be exploited. I'm saying that you have to understand where are you necessarily being exploited in your life. Now, it could be in your job. And are you exploiting others? Are you trying to exploit others? Are you looking at your job as a quid pro quo, or where you can get more rather than giving less? And it's just true. All in a position where, running a company where I have children, ex-wife, employees, where I'm always trying to be in a position where people are going to demand more. And if I were to let people do that, literally in a company, the employees, it's not their problem. It's what it should be, but people will try to get as much as they can. That's just how human nature is. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's to be expected. But if you allow that, then it's not necessarily in anybody's best interest to tolerate. It just doesn't work. And there's always, in every company, there's a constant thing going on where there's people that aren't providing value and are providing less than they take. And those people are let go or pushed out. Every law firm you've ever worked in, every employer you've ever worked in, The people that are getting pushed out are the people that aren't providing the most value. That's just how it is. I want you to repeat that. People that are getting pushed out of most law firms are the people that aren't providing the most value. When there's layoffs in law firms, they're laying the people off that they perceive aren't providing the most value, and they're keeping the ones that are. When law firms fire people, they typically, sometimes people can do something egregious, but they're firing the people that aren't doing the most, that they don't believe are providing the most value, and keeping around the ones that do. So this whole thing, when people don't make partner, they're advancing the people that they believe are providing the most value and not advancing the ones that don't. As if someone that runs any business or any company or any law firm, what people are doing in those positions, they're identifying people that are giving less value. And that's it. If they're trying to get people to improve, many times people will fight those efforts. And this is how it works in every business. Everyone is always at odds about giving too much and receiving equal and unequal rewards. But if people fight giving too much of themselves, meaning being better at their jobs and doing things well, then they're going to experience negative issues in their work and life. It's always the people that provide the most value that employers will always keep around. And if you provide the most value, you'll never lose a position because people recognize that. And there's just a big difference. You can look at wherever you've worked and you can see people that aren't providing value and those that are. And it's as simple as that. And they're people that are trying to game the system. The people that are gaming the system will almost always lose. The idea, and I want to explain this to everyone because I'm not saying if you're thinking this way, you're necessarily wrong, but the typical attitude of people that are working to middle class, which is almost all attorneys, is that you go to work for a business or a law firm and you get paid for your effort and time. And a lot of times, this is crazy, attorneys will think that, hey, my academic accomplishment and degrees entitle me to specific salary plus bonus for giving a certain number of hours, regardless of the value. Meaning my value is my academic degree, the school I went to. And so they come in and they believe that they are entitled to all these things because of where they went to school. And if they build a certain number of hours, but they don't necessarily think about what is the value I'm providing? What is the value I'm providing to clients? What is the value that I'm providing of the people that I'm working for? Is my work better? Am I working harder or whatever? And what I want you to see is when you go onto these different websites that have people gossiping about firms and so forth, what they're doing is they're coming up with this kind of us against them. So it's like the management against the workers and so forth. And people are siding on behalf of workers instead of being like part of a team. And this is where the danger lies. If you start believing that you're on the side, you're not on the side of the people that are paying you and giving you opportunity in a law firm, you're on someone else's side, you're on your own side, or you're on the side of workers against the law firm, that's going to create a lot of trouble. Years ago, a long time ago, I hired a graduate of the top Ivy League law school. This person's job was to choose stories to write about in the legal profession and then edit them. And he was paid very well, meaning as much as he would have been paid in working in a law firm. And I thought that with him doing such a good job, doing the job for as much money I was paying, he would really go all in and be as good as he could be. But instead, he, rolled into work each day at 10, would take long lunches, and at most days he would be gone by 5. And he had really no ambition to provide all that much value to the publication or anything meaningful. And he was coasting and felt that he deserved to because of his degrees and so forth. And then in addition to this, at some point, he was trying to get me to sell him stock options. And then, but at the same time was creating a lot of pressure for himself because he was providing much less value than he's taking. After some time, he left to take a job practicing, working, teaching somewhere. So, and this is how it works. Like people get into businesses, they get into law firms, they try to maneuver and take a lot of value very quickly. And then it ends up in the long run, often hurting them quite a bit. This is the idea right now that I'm trying to make sure everyone understands, and a very important idea that if you're going to succeed as an attorney or in any profession, you're only going to get that when you stop thinking about your position as something to do with exchange and throw yourself into the position. You have to do this. You can't constantly think of every interaction as an exchange. And so you network and improve. You constantly focus on long-term objectives, but you don't focus on short-term compensation and benefits, because I'll tell you what happens. I'm in these meetings with partners and stuff all the time. When people get bonuses, most of the time, the associates don't thank people. They are often upset that they didn't get enough. They are angry with the firm for not doing more and all this sort of stuff. And when that happens to partners, by the way, like they feel horribly, because their bonuses and things that they've got when they were younger, not even close to what you're getting. They felt good about putting extra money in your pocket, but no one says thank you. All they do is they feel like they didn't get enough. And so they get angry, they get impersonal, and all that does is make them mad at you and not think highly of you and that you don't appreciate them. And then when you do that, then you cast your lot on the side of people that are against them. And very few people will come in and say, thank you, I'm so grateful. This is very helpful. It's enabled me to do this for my family or save or whatever. Very few people do that. And instead they think, I'm not getting enough. And then they let people know about that, or they don't do as good of work. They're impersonal. They do other things. And so this is something that you need to be very careful of trying to give more than you take and not ask for that. And when people do get rewards for what they're doing, they are going to come in far more abundance than they would if you were doing quid pro quo and so forth. And people in relationships are successful without giving rewards. They don't measure everything that happens. They provide value, and they receive respect for this. And this is just a way of thinking. It's a way of providing value that is very interesting. I wanted to just come up with a couple of examples that I thought that are related to this and in this mindset and thinking about things this way. The first example was when I was before becoming an attorney, I had this asphalt business in Detroit that wasn't a huge company, but I had 10 people working for it or something. And I remember visiting a house of an attorney that was a young attorney, like an associate, but he was probably like 6 or 7 years out in Detroit, and talking to him about his driveway. And he said, okay, I was in Grosse Pointe, which is suburb, I'll let you do this work. But then he started talking to me like, how is it set up as a company? How is it? What are you doing? What are you doing to protect yourself from liability? And then asking me questions and listening and seeing and telling me that he could help me. And I was like, but I don't have any money to pay you. I'm not at the level of someone that can afford this. And he said, I don't care. And he sent me all these forms to fill out and put in the mail and how much I needed to pay and stuff. And I thought that was really, really nice. And then he called me and said that, just asked me if I had any questions about how to fill them out. They never wanted to get any business from me. I saw years later that this particular guy he was an associate at the time, the head of one of the corporate practices of one of the largest firms in Detroit. Think Dickinson Wright, Tecum Lagasse, Hahnemann Miller, like a very big firm. And obviously had a very large book of business. And I was like, wow, this whole idea of just giving to people and developing that kind of reputation is something that really benefited. Who would possibly want to help someone that covered in tar and working your driveway? It's very interesting. There was also another time I was in this religious service. I'm not going to get too far into that, but when I was in law school at the University of Virginia, and I remember this very well-spoken person got up, a priest or whatever. And anyway, he got up and he just started talking about when you give things, you don't try to get a reward from it by saying you did it or conditioning it on you getting something in return. You just give it. And even if you can give it anonymously, like that's even better, because if you're trying to give it to show people your name and everything, then that's your reward. So your reward is you want them to print your name, you give $1,000, sure, that's no problem. But the people that don't do that really have a whole mindset change. They give because that's who they are. And you look at these colleges and schools, like the people that give money, like there's always like some of the top donors. The biggest donors are anonymous. Like they do it anonymously. They don't want a reward. They just don't want to be known for the person that gave that because they don't want that reward. They want the reward of giving. And very often, the largest gifts are anonymous. And those people, the largest gifts are anonymous because that whole mindset of giving and not expecting something in return is what made those people successful in their lives. This particular thing with attorneys and being successful, over the past year, I've met several partners in major law firms with large books of business, like anywhere from 10 to $40 million. And there's lots of people like this out there. But one attorney, and most of them have a similar story. One attorney with a $10 million book of business, he would go out of his way to help general counsels and others with various problems. He would see someone lost their job, or he would find out that a new person came in that threatened them, or he would find out that they were having some sort of, the company was having some sort of crisis, and he could figure out how to network the general counsel with people, even maybe without getting anything in return. He would get to know people, and he would hear about problems for them, and he would propose solutions that were good, meaning he would come in and try to help them with the solutions that were good. And he did this stuff without charging people. Like, he didn't even charge people. He would come in and he would find people that needed help, and he would help them without charging them. He would help them when they were at a low point. And when they had nothing to give, the people he was helping had nothing to give at that point. And the people were amazed because anyone else that would contact them knew they were trying to inflate their problems and create issues. So a lot of attorneys will step in and be like, I need $30,000 or $50,000 to do this. And then once you pay that, I'm going to need money for this. But very few people will hop in and say, hey, don't worry about it. I will help you. I'm helping you get through this. I don't expect anything in return. Anytime you do something like that, people are going to remember you. And there's very few people that will do things like that. I've helped people in my life. I've been like, someone owed me a bunch of money, and I realized that amount of money was hurting them and they couldn't. So I forgot about it. I'm not saying that's the right thing for everyone to do, but those people always came back and they always appreciated what I did. And because very few people do that. Very few people have a spirit that's willing to give more than they take. They always want to have a quid pro quo. And if it's not met, they're met. And so this attorney built a name for himself by offering solutions as inexpensively as possible. He went to work at a giant New York law firm at one point, and he figured out that the firm had figured out how to charge his clients 3 times as much. And because he wanted to take care of his clients, he left that firm and went to one where they were recharging 1/4 as much because he wanted to give more than he took. And the clients would have stuck with him at this big New York firm, but his desire was to give more than he was, to give them the most value. And this is not how a lot of other people think. Most people try to take everything they can from people. They don't try to save them money. They try to get the highest price. They try to make sure that they're not giving anything without receiving. Another thing too, is very interesting. A lot of the most successful lawyers will sit on these different boards. They might sit on the board of Children for Autism or a hospital or things where they're not getting paid and they're just volunteering their time. And people see that and they're like, wow, this person is just very selfless and they're doing this. And then when they think about needing an attorney, they come to them. And most conflicts in business. So if you're a commercial litigator, this is what's happening all the time. There's people who want to take, other companies that want to take from attorneys or from businesses without giving. It's like this in your personal life as well. So there's your conflict with people because they're trying to take more than they're giving to you. Then this is how you experience with vendors, jobs, and so forth. And that's the example I gave you with the vendors earlier on. Why do you think certain countries are having issues growing? And why do Venezuela and all these countries have problems? And a lot of it is because they try to take more than they give to their people, to outside companies or countries. And look at Venezuela. So this whole thing is something that's very important. And being able to give more, not having a quid pro quo, and then is asked, and doing everything only for the highest salary, only the highest bonus, only if you're paid a lot, only this, only clients if they're willing to pay you. All these things are coming from a lack mentality, and a lack mentality is going to hold you back, and it's going to prevent you from getting opportunities. It's going to prevent you from staying employed. It's going to prevent you from getting clients. It's going to prevent all these things from happening in your life, which would not happen if you had the right mentality. If your mentality was, I'm going to give, and the universe will send good things back to me. That is what happens. This is what happens in all businesses. It's what happens when someone I had one guy that I hired once. He's worked for me for over 15 years. I picked him up at a labor exchange to do, which they have in Los Angeles. They have these things where you can go pick up people to work for you. And this particular one was really close down the street. I picked him up, and typically you'd pick up these people to do work for you, and they'd do an okay job. But this particular person was just out of control, just completely excited about the job. He'd just come over from Mexico and was completely enthusiastic. He was trusting. He worked as hard as he could. He found extra work to be done. He asked if he could come back. He said how much he appreciated the work. And meanwhile, back then he was paid whatever minimum wage was for that kind of work, $10, $15 an hour. And today he makes much more than that. And he comes into work 3 or 4 days a week, and he has for over a decade. So this is the kind of thing that can change your life. He used to ride a bike to put his bike on a bus and ride over here. And now he's got a couple of nice cars and a brand new pickup truck. This kind of attitude can change you. It will change you. It changes everyone. When I was in Michigan, my dad used to pay me to do things like shovel the driveway after it snowed, because that was something you had to do. And then the summers to cut the lawn, and then the fall to gather leaves and burn them by the side of the road. And each of these tasks, he would typically pay me a set amount. But each job I did, he taught me to do more than expected. So if I shovel the driveway and sidewalks, he'd encourage me to think about how to get extra work and get more done. I would do things like get the snow off the awnings, remove snow from his car, find little paths that there might be to the front door from other areas and move those and get those done and really do the job as thoroughly as I possibly could, even though I didn't need to necessarily do that to be paid. This is what I was taught. And so the idea is, and then he would always have me do it. He would prefer to have me do it than someone else. And even though I didn't live with him during the week, he would wait to have the job done until I came there because I would do it better. And so the idea was that you should always do more than the average person, and you should always work better than the average person. You should do more than expected. You should think of things that other people aren't thinking of. And this will make you appreciate. And doing this extra work and providing additional value is something that makes you more better. When you have a legal client, if the legal client needs something from you, you maybe provide them more value and tell them how they can avoid a lot of extra work by doing a certain thing to save themselves money. You come up with solutions that no one else has seen. This is very powerful stuff. This is why people continue to use certain law firms or lawyers. They do them because they know that the person's protecting them and will save the money and not request work when they don't have to. And my dad would always say, you need to do something to the effect of, if you're a Japanese kid doing the work. Now, why would he say that? Because at the time, the US was building these crappy cars that would break down. They were overpriced, that had all these problems and just weren't well made because they had gotten the US auto market back then had gotten very cocky about being able to have an audience for their cars. And so they kept making them worse and worse. And then the Japanese came along and provided more value, meaning they built cars that were cheaper. They built cars that got better gas mileage. They built cars that had a better resale value. They built cars that ran better. They built cars that had more features for the same price, and they were providing more value. And this is what happened. They did more engineering work. They did more work on their factories and they built the best car, but much better cars. They continually improved them. It's interesting. If you ever study the automotive industry, there was a guy named Edward Deming, and he taught them how to build the best quality into their cars. And if you go into the headquarters of today, they have 2 large portraits. One of them is Hirito or something. I don't know what the guy's name is, the founder of Toyota. And the other is Deming, because he taught them how to do these produce this great work and give a lot of value to people. So this stuff is huge. Something that built Toyota. It's something that built the Japanese car industry. And it's something that, when it's not done, makes people not want to do business with you. It makes companies go bankrupt, and it makes careers go bankrupt as well. Extremely important. And I hope you understand what I'm saying, because this is about getting clients. It's about getting in advance. It's about who wins and who doesn't inside of businesses. It's about all that. Now, people can cheat and get ahead sometimes, but it never lasts. That's what you need to understand. If you cheat to do this stuff, there are people that will get ahead. They will take credit for things that you did. They will undermine you. But everyone always sees it in the long run. So you may think someone's got it out for you. The only reason someone would have it out for you is if they felt like you were providing them the value that they needed. And these kind of questions are on calls every week. I got fired. I had this happen. I had this happen. The firm was unfair. All these sorts of things. But if you are providing more value to people than you're taking, and you are all in providing value, and your work quality is improving, and you're asking questions, and you're acting in a way that provides more value than anyone else is in your organization, then the law firm is going to keep you on and advance you. What choice do they have? If you're the one providing the most value, what choice do they have? What choice does a client have when law firms and people are coming to them and asking them, telling them they need this money, telling them that they can't work without this, or they need this and this? Or they're going to charge them for this, and they're going to charge them for this. And then someone else comes in and says, I don't need to charge you anything. It'll take me an hour or two, but I can give you the solution. This is what I would do. And they stop it. And that's what the best lawyers do. They don't necessarily have to turn themselves into billing machines. They turn themselves into advocates for their clients, because once they do that, the business starts to flow in, and they're far better off than they would be had they tried to do these one-off types of things. So here's the significance of providing value. Again, this is the example of the Japanese cars and what happened there. The Japanese built far superior cars to American cars, and they did extra work to make their products much better than their competitors. So no one in their right mind at one point, why would you buy an American car? It's going to break down. It's going to have resale value. It's going to be poorly made. It's have all these problems. And suddenly you can buy a car like a Honda back then that's going to run. It's always going to start. That's not going to have expensive mechanical problems. You're not going to need to take the shop all the time. And it's just not going to make any sense for anybody that's educated to buy an American car. Now, back then, when you're talking about the 1980s and so forth, and so the people were still buying American cars, but the majority of people that were buying them, if they could only get financing through a few companies like Chrysler, or if they were old and just had been used to buying American cars and never had thought about a foreign car. So these are the people that are buying them. But the idea is that the reason people were no longer buying American cars was because American companies weren't improving and providing value. They would just go and basically change the bumpers and a few things in the cars each year without making them better. They were just taking advantage of people's goodwill. And so your Japanese companies just kept growing and growing and winning more share of the work because they were doing better work, providing more value, and doing a better job. And like many people in jobs all over, they became complacent. They believed the people would buy whatever they built. The unions tried to extract as little work for as much money as possible. They didn't care about quality the way they should. The executives of the companies were trying to get the fattest pay packages they possibly could for themselves, and no one was providing the sort of value that that they should have. And for the American companies, the Japanese, for example, after World War II, they were considered to have horrible cars, some of the worst cars imaginable, and people didn't buy them even though they were less expensive. So they were considered, compared to American cars, like just laughingstocks, garbage. But they kept improving and they kept providing more and more value. And eventually their entire focus on quality and things changed the entire Japanese economy. They gained their reputation for providing far more value than they took, meaning they were able to take something that other people were making and they made it much better. And so your ability to succeed, and this is where I really hope that you grasp this, but your ability to succeed is going to be in direct proportion to the amount of value you provide to your firm and clients compared to your peers. Meaning you're not just trading your time. You need to figure out how to deliver more value. And that means doing better work, double checking your work, going through and making sure that you make people feel appreciated for giving you work, and then just delivering much more value to those around you. And that means you're in every category. You look as well as you can. Your work is better. You're making an effort to build more hours. You're making an effort to do better socially and to connect people that you work with, opportunities and knowledge. And and to contribute more than your peers. You gain a reputation where people talk about you, that you're going out of your way to help your peers. You're not always, you're doing it in a selfless way. And people will talk about that. If instead of competing with your peers, you're trying to help them, people will know that and it will get around. Instead of trying to, your work just staying kind of the same quality, if your work starts improving, people will see that. There's very simple things too, by the way, that people can do. If you're a writer, you can take classes and take courses to make your writing better. If you're a corporate attorney, you can learn about different aspects of the law to make you better. If you're a patent attorney, all these things like people can do, they're improving and they're providing value. And this is how it works in every law firm and every business. Everything is about providing as much value as possible. And rewards come in proportion to your ability to provide value. You should be constantly trying to improve. If people are going to the office and you're not, you should be trying to go in the office, because that's important. You should be doing whatever you can to provide the most value to your employer and to potential clients. This is what everything's about. It's about not protecting your time and your sovereignty at home and the amount of work that you're doing and the fact that you don't want to improve, you just want to do the work you're given. If that's what you do, then that's what kind of life you're going to have. It's as simple as that. If you do the opposite, then you're going to have a much better life and career. It's as simple as that. If you work on providing value to people in your personal life, surprising them with gifts on their birthday or whatever, or calls, and making people feel good and really trying to be someone that's there for them. Very few people do that. Very few people go out of their way to help people and to make them without expecting anything in return. I've done that at various points in my life. I had someone once that I remember when I was in high school that everyone thought was just a complete loser and made fun of and that sort of thing. And then I spent some time with him, meaning not a lot. And I decided that it wasn't fair that people were doing this. And I got behind him and I told everyone how great he was and what a great person he was and how he did this and this. And recruiter, so I lobbied for him to all these people and I got him in with those people and made him feel good again. And then I never said anything to him. I never told him I did it. But years later, he found out that I had, and it changed his whole experience of school. And to this day, I hear from him every several months and have dinner with him once a year and so forth, and his family. But all that happened, the only reason that he does all that, because he realized that I helped him behind the scenes. And I really did. At the time anyway, it's not but I did. And that's affected. Now I have someone that knows my family that I see and you help people behind the scenes and you do things for people and they remember it and they come back. I did that with people when I was practicing law, and those people come back. And you do this with people. You provide value to them without expecting anything in return. You do it with people you work with. You do it everywhere you go. I remember when I was applying to business school, I went to a couple of partners I worked with, and they were like, I will write anything you freaking want me to write because I think you're that awesome. Why don't you write the letters and I will sign them? If you can provide value to people, they will always remember it. You can always come back to them. I remember I had a cousin that was working at Sherman and Sterling in Hong Kong. And during this financial crisis or whatever, they were like, we just don't have any business coming in. We're going to have to let go almost all the associates in this office. And so he was one of them. And so they decided they let him go, but he had been working for this one partner there and providing a ton of value and doing a great job. And so he left, and this partner called everyone he knew at every company he knew and told him and got him a job. And the job actually ended up paid a lot more than he was making. And he's still at that job to this day, almost 2 decades later. He's general counsel of this company. So this is what people do. And when you provide value and when people see that, they will keep you around. They will not ever let you go, and they will advance you, and all sorts of good things will happen to you. It's just what happens when you provide more value without always expecting a reward and documenting everything that you're doing. And this is just very important. And I can think of countless examples of people in our own company that in some cases closing down offices and just keeping them on without a job because because they provide so much value. So this sort of stuff happens all the time, and very few people do it. So what is the significance of this? When you're in a law firm and you want to succeed, you're just going to need to provide more value than the people that you're working with. You're not going to tell people you're providing more value. You're going to show it. You're not going to ask for raises because you're providing more value. You're going to show it. You're going to do everything you can to provide value to everything. Your clients, you don't talk badly about them. You believe that your object is to bring in the client and bring in as much money as possible and as quickly as possible. That's what a lot of people think. They think they need to bring in the client in, build them as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And some may moderate this with the idea of keeping the fees low enough for them not to go anywhere. But this is what many partners in law firms have. I remember I was working in this Dewey Ballantyne office in Los Angeles, and that was just a big New York firm. And they had this very wealthy client, one of the wealthiest people in the world from another country. And I remember there was this partner there that was doing work on behalf of this client. It might even been one of the people that brought them in. And he was sitting there, and I was in this meeting with him, and he was just saying he thought this client was a scumbag. He, didn't like them. He just didn't approve of them and thought they were all this kind of stuff. And I remember at the time, I'm like, this guy's really off his rocker. Like, how could you possibly talk about a client that way? Someone that's paying you money when your job is to get on their side. And so I kept checking up what was happening to this guy. Sure enough, he lost his job there. And then he went to a kind of a mid-sized firm that wasn't doing very well in Los Angeles, a national firm. Then he was there for a year or two, and then something happened there, and he became a solo practitioner. And then he started trying to keep that going. And then he started writing a blog about how hard it was to keep business and attract clients to the job, and how the practice of law is not what it used to be, and how clients don't appreciate you and firms don't appreciate you and all this sort of thing. And then eventually he took some job in the government. Now, let me explain to you something. Like, this is someone that was at a firm where he might have been making as a salaried partner, or I don't know, definitely $1 million plus per year, reduced to taking some government job, I'm sure paying less than a couple $100,000 a year, after failing as a solo practitioner, after failing at 2 firms. You fail when you're not providing value and you think negatively about your employer or your client. It just drives you into the freaking ground. This is what happens. This is why people lose their job in-house often the time. You go in-house, your job is to protect the client. It's not to tell them how freaking wrong they are. It's to come up with solutions. But this is what attorneys don't do. And then they lose their job and they don't know what the hell happened. They were just providing legal advice. They don't get on the side of the company. They don't get on the side of the people they're working for. They don't get on the side of their clients. They just are on their side. You're in this job where you're like just on your side, and you're not on the company side, and you're not on the client side. You're just looking out for yourself. And this is what makes you end up alone. It's what makes you a solo practitioner. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's what happens. It's what makes you always thinking about yourself, having problems in personal relationships. It's about all of this stuff. And this is what people do that don't succeed. They go into law firms and they play the same game. And then they go into other jobs and they play the same game. And then they're upset that they didn't succeed. And this is exactly what happens. It would happen to anybody. And you got to understand, if you're part of the psychology, you need to stop it right now. People will not concentrate and giving more value than they take. They become motivated by taking as much as they can, doing as little work as possible. Sometimes they'll even brag about how easy this job is and how much I'm getting paid. And if you think this way, and you're constantly trying to manipulate clients, you tend up with no clients. The other thing that happens to you too is you can get lucky. Like, you can get a job and hold on to it for some time, maybe not being monitored closely enough and so forth, but it will always catch up with you. It can't help but catch up with you. It's always going to catch up with you, because business is about efficiency. Law firms are about efficiency. So you're never going to be able to walk away from this. You're never going to be able to continually play games and get along with it. It's just not going to last. And sometimes people are able to get clients. They may be very charismatic and bring people in. But most clients are going to go away when they feel taken advantage of and do not receive the value they're paying for. They're always evaluating their options and trying to ensure that they receive the best value possible for what they're paying. I knew an attorney that went to Harvard Law School, and very early in his career started with incredible ability to network and meet people, started bringing in as like a second or third year associate, or maybe a little fourth, maybe bringing in all these small clients, but clients with a lot of money to spend, and talking about that needed help with their businesses or starting businesses. And he would take them and end up billing them as much as he possibly could, much more than they ever thought they would be billed, then collecting very aggressively on these bills and doing this for some period of time. And eventually these clients would be lost and they would be angry. They'd be angry at the firm, and he would have taken advantage of them. I want to just back up right here and tell you what happened to this guy. So this guy eventually just got a very bad reputation. He was unable to bring in clients anymore. He would go to these different networking events and things where people would meet clients, and everybody found out about him, and he got a very bad reputation. And then he eventually lost his position at that firm and got some job because he didn't bring any clients anymore, and he built everything up on that. He lost, and again, he got in that position by nickel and diming and playing all these games and thinking that it was him against the clients and allowing people in his firm to overbill and all this sort of stuff. And he could have been a very successful lawyer had he done things correctly, but he didn't. And then, so he lost the clients, got a bad reputation. This guy, for whatever reason, valued I met him very early in his career when he was starting at his first firm. And he valued what I thought a lot of him. So one of the last times I saw him, he had done business with people that we both went to school with. At one point, he had upset them. There had been lawsuits trying to get paid and all this stuff. So at one point, he came by my office and opened up these websites that he said was his law firm. And it had pictures of heads of state and tractors that moving, working in giant mines, saying that this was his firm and this is what they did and everything. And he came from a lot of money, like his family was very rich. And he had released a 10,000 square foot office in Los Angeles with the idea that he was going to populate it with all these attorneys, which he never did. And you'd call there and he would answer the phone. Literally just ego and not providing value, trying to figure out how to get stuff from nothing. And this is what happens when you play these games, when you play these games with clients, when you play these games with your life. And then eventually the guy drove himself into lunacy, like craziness doing this. So lawyers that build the most notable books of business, they're always concerned with giving more than they can. That's what they do. They want their clients to benefit from associating with them. They want their clients to save money, and they want their clients to know that they have their backs. They're not out for themselves. They're out for their client. They take their client's side. And honestly, the worst attorneys out there often don't take their client's side. They don't know how to do it. They just parrot the law back and tell their clients this and that, but they don't know how to truly have the backs of their clients, and they don't know how to take their side, and they don't know how to argue for them, and they don't know how to get excited about them, and they don't know how to do all these things. They're able to provide more value than they take. And that is very important. They're able to make people think they care about them, that they're going to do everything they can for them. And this is exactly, by the way, what associates do with partners. It's what partners do with partners that have controlling roles in the firm. This is what everyone does that becomes successful. They do this. And this is a huge point. I want you to understand this. You have to be on the side of providing as much value as you can without expecting something in return for partners, for clients, for everyone you're possibly coming in contact with. This is what will change your life and your career, doing this. Doing the opposite, you don't prolong matters. Like, you try to get things done as quickly as possible. You don't cut corners, and to do things, you want to provide more value. I remember I had this law firm in Malibu, California. The law firm had its own office. It had multiple attorneys working in it. It was a good law firm. And what it did essentially is, for companies I own, it would do corporate filings and keep them up to date. Sometimes we'd have litigation where law firm would pay us or something that owed us money, or sometimes we would have cases about different things related to employment law. They would write agreements for our new recruiters and agreements with law firms. And so it was a fairly busy law firm. But what happened with this law firm, I remember, is I was talking to this attorney that wanted to come over. And he was in this one practice area, it doesn't matter which one, that we were actually billing out clients to clients. And he came in and said, what did he say? He said that he had all these forms and he figured out how we can charge like extra hours for filling out these forms, even though we're already done. And isn't this a great way to make money? And that, by the way, stopped what I was doing with him. At that point, why would I possibly want to hire someone whose idea is doing something for nothing or not getting paid? So the idea is that when you're a very good attorney for your clients, you're not cutting corners and you're not interested in getting paid more. You want to provide more value, because when you provide more value, good things are going to come to you. And when you look at your life, you can think about your life, that your success and happiness really are going to deal with this particular topic. How do you provide more value? How do you provide more value to your significant other? How do you provide value to your children without expecting anything in return when they're young? And then they grow up and you have someone hopefully that appreciates the value that you provided and is with you for the rest of your life. When you have children that are having problems and things, it's often because their parents don't spend time with them and give to them and go to their games and then they have trouble later on. Now, that's not always the case, of course, but providing value is important in every area of your life, with your employer, with your relatives, your friends, people you do business with. And because if you think of your own life, everywhere you turn, there's people that are going to try to take advantage of you and take as much as they can from you as quickly as possible. It could be an auto repair shop, it could be a million different places, but that's what happens. So most people are trying to do this and take shortcuts, but very few people are actually out there trying to provide as much value as they possibly can, trying to save you money, trying to do things in a way that's going to make a huge difference for you. Here's really an example and finally a discussion about how you should approach all this and what you can do to prioritize value. And again, this particular topic and what you're listening to right now is, in my opinion, one of the most important topics that anyone can possibly listen to. And the fact that you're watching this and absorbing this information really says a lot for you, because if you understand this, your whole life and career, especially in the law firm, and change in the legal environment, every law student, every attorney, definitely being taken advantage of every turn. You're being paid, hopefully, you're being paid less than the amount of value the law firm expects you to generate. So if you're billing out at $400 an hour and you work 2,000 hours a year, you're generating $800,000, and the law firm may pay you 1/4 of that or whatever. And so a lot of people can't navigate this tension between providing value and the fear of getting exploited. And at the same time, many people, because they feel they're being exploited, they will deliver less value than they're capable of, what ends up holding them back, meaning they won't do extra work. They won't give extra value. They won't do more than is asked. And this ends up holding them back. And then when you come down to it, I mean, if you're working in a law firm or you're running a law firm or whatever you're doing, you're being the best at anything, people are going to, at some point, you're going to have to be taken advantage of. That's just how it works. And you're going to have to do it. But if you are being taken advantage of and you're offered more value than others and that are in similar situation, then you're going to do well financially in terms of, and in terms of the prestige level of the firm you end up to. You're going to have, people are going to want to give you more work, and you're going to be asked to do more things. You're going to be given bonuses that you may not even realize are coming. And all these things are going to happen to you when you do work this way. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to understand your practice area and things so well that clients are going to hear you and hear the enthusiasm in your voice and want to work with you. That partners that you're working with are going to see the enthusiasm and how much you're offering them, are going to want to work with you. And this is an example of providing value. If you look at your job the other way, it's just job, then that's not going to happen to you. But if you look at it this way, it is. And think about every organization you've ever worked with. There's people that are trying to provide as least value as possible. Law firms, companies, and other organizations offer less value than they receive. Law firms that get big and attorneys who have big careers, that happens to them because they're providing so much value. The world is appreciates what they do. So the law firm grows and things go well. If the opposite occurs, like the world doesn't feel like you're giving them enough value, then the law firm won't grow and the attorney won't grow. And then they have a career and they don't understand why they're not succeeding when others are. It's because they weren't providing the value. So I know of one woman in Los Angeles who works in this law firm. I couldn't believe it when I found out about this, but she makes about $1.5 million a year paid by this law firm. She's made that for the past 3 years. And each year she hasn't billed over 400 hours. She has no business. And there are situations like this in most law firms and organizations. This is an example of someone gaming the system. Now, she works for the founder of this law firm who brought her in. She's got some interesting, very good qualifications, but she's not providing value. Everyone knows it. And the people that are paying her are out there basically providing this huge amounts of value that allow this to happen. But it shouldn't happen. This kind of stuff does. So you don't want to be known as that kind of person. You want to be known as someone that people look at and they're like, wow, this person is providing all this value. And this is what they're doing. And this is incredible. Like this person is providing value. If you're providing the most value, you're not going to get laid off. If you're providing the most value, it's going to be very hard for law firms to ask you to leave when you get senior. If you're providing the most value, it's going to be very difficult for clients not work with you as opposed to someone else. And when you come up with it, when you get a new client and you take them away from another firm, the client is amazed by the fact you're giving them all this personal attention and how much insight and stuff that you give them compared to another attorney, and then they use you. This is just what happens. So figuring out how to provide value. And no one, by the way, can coast. And what does that mean? That means that a lot of people believe that they can slide and just get paid and receive more value than they give. And this mindset always leads to failure and prevents from people being successful. This is exactly what happens. People think that they found a way to give or to receive when you're given the least amount. And this is what happens. They become unemployed. They become unhappy. They become financially unsuccessful. And then they're always concerned of being taken advantage of by their employers and colleagues. I had someone recently that I was talking to about doing a recruiter role in our company. And this person had not worked in a couple of years. And why would I talk to that person about doing a recruiting role? It wasn't an important recruiting role. It was working on understanding different practice areas and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't necessarily candidate facing. But the particular person, we made them an offer and it was a good offer. And they came back and said, that's not what I'd be making as a second-year attorney in a big firm. And I was like, yeah, but this is not a big firm. And so the person has stayed unemployed. I see people all the time that work with BCG and they are candidates of ours. And when we have a candidate, by the way, if you're one of our candidates, which I'm sure there's lots of people on this call that are, then you know that we are going all out to provide you as many opportunities and places to apply, and we'll do the work and to try to get you in there. What happens is invariably we get people interviews, and sometimes those people are the people that are dedicated to this process. Sometimes those people are unemployed, and they say, how much is the salary? And maybe they were making $150, and we say it's $120. This is what the firm says, and they say, there's no way I'm going to go out on this interview. I'm like, but you've been unemployed for months. What do you expect? What do you expect us to do? And they're like, I'm not taking ever less than 150 because that's what I was making. And this is, we'll say the market's not good for your practice here at the moment. And they won't do it. They'll think that anything less than that, they would rather be unemployed than working. And this sort of attitude hurts people. And this particular person, people believe that they're going to be taken advantage of. And so they won't commit. They won't go to work someplace. They never learn to provide value to people, to reciprocate if someone gives them an opportunity. And these sorts of people never get as far as they could or should. They just don't. And I've run all these businesses and legal placement for actually over 25 years. And in my life, I've encountered all forms of people and businesses that have done everything they could to exploit. And daily, not as much anymore, but There's people trying to exploit me in business by providing less value than I'm paying for. There's people trying to do less work. There's other people that are trying to do the opposite and give as much as possible and find solutions to problems. But there are always different types of people doing that. And I'm sure I'm just telling you this because you should look at wherever you work or wherever you worked and see what side are you on? Are you on the side providing the most value or not? Are you on the side of the employees against the employer? Are you on the side of who are you doing that with? And then also when you look at people that have had problems in different organizations you've been in, are those the people that are providing less value? Whose side are they on? Are they on their side of the employers? And answering those questions is hugely important. And just think about it. People are let go from firms all the time. People are let go from places, but what good does it do you to be on the side of if people can make you a partner, or advance you, or let you go when there's no work? What good does it do for you to be on this kind of worker side against the employer, trying not to provide as much, when these are the people that decide your fate? And just so you understand, it doesn't matter what practice area you are. It doesn't matter what part of the country you are. Most firms, not all of them, there might be some weird jobs like a workers' compensation attorney in Elko, Nevada or something. But for the most part, most jobs that law firms have, they can hire more than one person. It's not difficult. So if you're just playing games with them and not doing a good job, then they can hire someone to replace you. Why wouldn't they? You would too. So here's the importance of all this, being dedicated to your work and career success, is that all the people that I've thought about that have worked for me, if they would do better financially and with more responsibility and keep their jobs in all economic climates, if they are providing value. And people that I've worked with that weren't providing value and tried to game the system, I don't keep around. I had one guy that started in the mailroom of our company, and meaning he was working for a little bit more than minimum wage, and he did so much work. He got all these raises, but then he thought that the company was growing, and even though his salary had doubled and so forth, he thought he should be receiving more. And then he started doing less work and trying to get overtime for things he wasn't entitled to, and then not doing tasks that should have been done. And then he started working all sorts of overtime. We didn't have to, so he turned his role into taking rather than giving. And he was caught and sitting at his desk doing nothing for hours on end after everyone went home to get paid extra money. And he's someone who's trying to get something for nothing. And this person, of course, lost their job. They had a great job. They had risen very far. But the people that do the best work and throw into their jobs advance, and people that don't. So that's just how it works. And you need to provide as much value as you possibly can to your employer. And if you're young and working hard, they're getting a good experience, and getting experience and learning what you're doing is what you should be worrying about. If you're a partner, taking care of your clients and providing as much value for the work you're doing is also very important. So everything is really about, and this presentation, by the way, is almost done. This is a somewhat long presentation, but it's actually very important. Most people question who's providing the most value. And we do this, employers do it with us and clients do it with us. So everywhere you're looking, people are asking who's providing the most value, who's the easiest to work with, who is giving me more, who makes me feel like I'm getting more than I'm paying for. This is what the object is. This is what you need to be in the position of. You need to look like someone who's giving more than they're getting paid for. That's how it works. And so to be successful, you can't always be expecting things in return and make providing value like this a way of life. The more value you provide, the better off you're going to be. And you don't want to be taken advantage of, and nor do you need to be. Any rational factor in economy will provide you with benefits in contrast to the value you provide. I had a guy once two guys that worked for me. And I'll just tell you what this psychology does to people that are doing this. I had one guy that we were driving to a business meeting, and I was talking to him about some extra responsibilities I wanted to give to him in his job. Not major ones, but some extra responsibilities. And then he said, okay, if I get these extra responsibilities, of course, I'm going to expect a raise, and we'll have to talk about that. And in my mind, I was giving him these extra responsibilities because I wanted him to do well and I liked him. But he took that as a way to get extra money. And then I didn't give him a raise. And eventually, because of that, he quit. Well, people that work for me, I always follow their career, and I watched him go to business school, and then I watched him graduate. I watched him get a job, and then I watched him bounce around for several jobs, and basically eventually ended up working alone, calling himself a consultant or something. And this is what happens. Like, that psychology just doesn't work. It hurts you in the long run. You can get something, but if you think this way, it's always going to catch up with you. It always does, always has, to everyone I've ever seen act that way. I had another guy that was working for me as an attorney. He was hired when he was graduated. He was the youngest graduate ever of his law school, which was a top 10 law school. When he was 19, he couldn't find a job because he was so young. I hired him at maybe the equivalent of, what would it be now? $130,000 a year when the starting salaries were $180,000. And I thought that was very generous because he didn't have any experience. And certainly at one point, the salaries went up, say I hired him at $80,000 and the salaries were $120,000 or something. Then salaries went up from $120,000 to $160,000. And he suddenly was very unhappy, wanted a raise and everything like that. Gave him a raise, but resented it because he wasn't the type of attorney that I was, young attorney that didn't have any experience. And eventually, when things slowed down in our company, he was let go and hasn't been able to find a real job in a long time, and spent a lot of time just doing nothing. This kind of stuff is what happens. I'm not trying to be rude, but people that have bad experiences inside of employers and don't get ahead of when they want to, they often don't understand why. And this particular guy had some serious problems. I had another guy that worked for me, another attorney, that was the same way. And things didn't go well for him either. So after he left our company, he bounced around to a bunch of different things as well. So this is just, and then eventually doing nothing and became an alcoholic. All this kind of stuff is what happens if you don't think about providing as much value. And that when you are providing a lot of value, there are people that would take advantage of you. You have to be aware of that. Employers will try not to pay you what you're worth. There's nothing wrong with leaving an employer and going someplace that's going to appreciate the value. Clients will often try to get you to work for free at a lower price. Law firms may string you along without making you a partner and expecting you to continue working hard and sharing the firm's profits. And if you're providing value to them with no future in stake, then yeah, you need to go someplace that's going to appreciate your value. I'm not saying any of this is good, but I am saying that if you're focused on nothing but short-term rewards and quid pro quos for value, then it's not going to work. You may have a romantic partner doesn't work and contribute despite needing them to and take advantage of you. And how do you deal with that situation where people are demanding more than they provide in return? You don't want them, you kick them out. You don't want them in your life. You're upset. And if you're providing more value with no reward, then you have to look for another partner or a job. You have to. There are situations that are intolerable and where your best efforts will never give you rewards, where the people that you're working for don't reciprocate your work, where you are giving much more than you receive. And there are poorly run organizations that will not recognize your contribution, that they're too messed up with their own stuff to recognize it. And if that happens, you need to go someplace where your value is going to be a reward. And this is part of the reason that people look for jobs. They're providing value. There's no future. There's nothing they can do to improve their situation. They need to get out of there. They've seen what happens to others. They may be providing value and it's not good. This is what they do. A law firm will grow because the law firm's owners will sacrifice their interest. They're providing opportunities for the people there and the new people who come in. They can offer clients excellent value for the fees that they're charging, and everything works because the value is as close as possible on both sides. Law firms that don't grow, you can see them all the time. They shrink, they go out of business. They're just not providing value. Oftentimes these law firms that are shrinking, the clients don't think that they're behind them. They're not. They're trying to charge so much money, and people are out for their self-interest, and everyone suffers. So a law firm will thrive if they have sound systems that ensure that the rewards match the input and so forth. And everyone's trying to have things that are matching output. So this is the gist of the presentation. I'll take questions after a quick break, but I can't emphasize enough how important this concept is. And I hope that you understand it, because if you understand it, you're always going to be employed. If you understand it, you're always going to be advanced. If you understand it, you're always going to attract clients, and you want to vibrate on this frequency of giving things and being a source of value, because that makes things good. That makes good things come back to you. Businesses grow to provide more value than they take. People grow by providing more value than they take. And this is what we want. Now, you don't seem to be a martyr, but if you provide value, people instinctively want to pay you. They do. And they want to reward it because you're helping them. And that's what you need to do. You need to put yourself in a position where you're providing that type of value. So take a quick break just for a minute or two. It's been a little bit long presentation, but when I come back, I will answer questions. The big thing to understand about questions is you should ask questions about any issues you're having in your own career, and I hopefully can answer them and usually can. But your career, anything related to the practice of law, and anything that can help you today, because that's my goal, is to really provide as much value to you, and I'm not asking for anything in return. All right, so we are going to go to questions. Just give me 1 second. And this, by the way, the questions are one of my favorite things of the week. I love talking to candidates on the phone when I'm working with people. Like, I love doing that, but I really do enjoy questions as well, because I really learn so much about people. It helps me with articles I work on and other new presentations. And so I really do appreciate when people ask questions. Let me see here. Questions. Okay, here we go. It looks like there's about 10 questions so far, which is okay, but hopefully it'll have some more. So this person is asking me to look at their resume. So this, I don't need to do necessarily a resume review, because if someone is a law student, they're having a hard time getting positions by law firms. All you need to do when you're trying to get a position in a law firm and you're not, is you just need to make sure that you're contacting the right places. An example would be, I'll show you an example. I clerked in a city called, where was it? Saginaw, Michigan, right? So Saginaw in Michigan, not clerked, actually clerked in a city called Bay City, but it's close to Flint, which is a horrible town. Flint, there's shows about it and everything. It's not a horrible town. The people aren't anything. It's just a dying automotive city, but you could say Flint personal injury. If you want to work in a law firm, I don't care. I don't think you'd want to work in, let's say you're Ohio State or whatever, Cincinnati, I don't know how to spell it. Cincinnati personal injury attorney. So whatever the practice area you're interested in, you can definitely find people that are interested in hiring you just by contacting lots and lots of people and asking them if you can work for them in the summer or whatever. It's really not that difficult. All these people, like here, there's probably hundreds of them if you do the search that you could work for. None of these people, almost none of them, are getting unsolicited resumes and so forth from attorneys that are interested in working for them. So it's very simple to get a job. I just want everyone to understand, if you want a summer job or a permanent job, like, all you need to do is just reach out to people. I guarantee you that American Guile Injury Attorneys is not getting a lot of people that want to work for them during the summer. It's just not happening, but that gives you experience, and that's very important. What are you going to do? You have to be able to find a position in the summer, and the only way you can do that is by knowing the places to apply to and doing a lot of the stuff. Oh, by the way, if you ask questions and you think your name's going to show up or something because you're logged into Zoom, it's not. I'll always make sure that I don't show your name if you're worried about that. So these questions are all anonymous. Okay, I've witnessed attorneys who have experienced burnout by constantly putting others' needs before their own. How can we learn from these experiences, avoid falling into similar patterns, all while maintaining our commitment to helping our clients? Okay, so that's really good. So you issue a burnout. So first of all, you shouldn't be experiencing burnout if you like what you're doing. If you're in a practice area doing the kind of work that makes you excited, then your work should actually make you feel good and not the other way around. So if you're in a practice area and doing the type of work that makes you feel burnt out, that's not something that's good. What makes you happy? What do you like? What do you to do? And what makes you happy? You have to understand, that if you don't like your work, you're going to get burned out. And so that's the problem. Burnout is when the work you're doing is not energizing you. It's actually doing the opposite. And that means you're either in the wrong firm, you're in the wrong practice area, or maybe you're just in the wrong practice setting. So you should be doing something that doesn't burn you out, which is very important. Putting others' needs before your own just means with the work that you do it as well as it possibly can be done, and for the people you're doing. But you don't want to ever burn yourself out. Burnout is horrible because it means you're almost like in a prison where you're just constantly tired and slogging through the day and you're not getting energized by your work. So the only way to really be happy in any career is to make sure that you put yourself into a position where you're doing the site's work that you like and that makes you happy. Because if you're not, then you're always going to be burned out. So you need to be in a practice setting in the type of firm that you're enjoying the work. And if that's not happening, then that's not good for you. So you have to be in something that energizes you. You have to be enthusiastic about the work you do. And if you're not, frankly, then you're in the wrong practice setting or you're in the wrong practice area. And I do not condone at any stretch of the imagination you just doing a work and doing some kind of work and being unhappy in the rest of your career. That's just a waste of your life. And no one should be doing something that's not energizing them. You can make money and have a successful career doing anything that energizes you. So anything that you get excited about that makes you excited, you could be successful doing it. You could do it as a contractor. You could do it as like a building contractor. You could do it people go into acting. I knew one very successful scriptwriter that went to University of Virginia or went to law school and bought a house from me. You do what you like and that makes you happy. Everything shouldn't burn out. You should be, if you're doing the right work that you like, you should be energized by it. And just to give you an understanding of, I love my job. Like I get up at 5 a.m. every day just so I can do it. And I'm energized by it and makes me happy. And that's the kind of career you want to be in. You want to do something that you like. And so if you're not getting out of practicing law, you probably shouldn't be practicing law. It's not to say there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't work for you. And frankly, what you're talking about wouldn't work for me. Thanks for these good questions too, by the way. These are usually people ask questions that are not necessarily related to the webinar. And this is, people are asking those. This is good. So I agree that the effort extended pays out in spades. However, in the current environment, at least in ancillary industries, title insurance, the recent layoffs are directly related to market conditions. Layoffs are made to cut costs oftentimes the highest salaries are cut just to keep the lights on, thus sacrificing excellent attorneys and compromising relations. This has nothing to do with the effort extended. Absolutely. You can be in a situation where your practice area, the work completely dries up and there's no work or that things are cut and that's the problem. What do you do in that situation? What you do is hopefully, not always, you're on the side of people that can help you. So they appreciate your work. They figure out ways that they may be able to help you. Not always, but sometimes. And you're right. Generally, the effort you extend does pay off, but there are situations where it doesn't. I think one of the things that you should be thinking about and that I certainly thought about when you choose a practice area, when you choose the type of work you're doing, when you think about all these things, what does it look like? What does it look like in a different economic environment? What does it look like if things change? What does it look like if things don't work out at my firm? So you ask these kind of questions, you figure out like what is going to happen if things don't work out. You need to understand that. And because these are important questions to ask. Like one of the most interesting things that happens, and this is sad, but it's true, is attorneys come out of law school all the time and they're given a choice. They're given a choice of doing something litigation related, something transactional, which could be like real estate or corporate. They have this choice to make. And because the salaries are high and the jobs are often easier to get and so forth, a lot of times people will choose to go into something like corporate. Corporate's very, very popular for people to choose to go into. They'll go into corporate. And what happens in corporate is pretty scary, especially with junior associates. Like you go into corporate as a junior associate and you may have firms throwing money at you. And then all of a sudden the economy changes and there's nothing. It's just like you're dead at your firm, you're dead. So these are, and if you do a good job, you're not dead, but most people are. So you have to make decisions about the practice area you're in, like you're saying, the title insurance and so forth. You have to make decisions about the practice area you're in, about what's going to happen if things don't work out. And you have to think like that because otherwise you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And that's what scares me about a lot of this stuff. So one of my colleagues recently faced a situation where they felt their willingness to help was being taken advantage of by a client. what strategies and boundaries can attorneys establish to prevent such situations without compromising the quality of service? Yeah, so you don't want to be taken advantage of by a client. You have to, if someone's taking advantage of you, you don't want to do anything. Just as you are trying to provide more value, if the client is taking advantage of you, and you realize then there's you shouldn't have anything. You shouldn't allow it to happen. You have to tell them, at some point I have to charge you. I can't write down these hours and do the work. And there are clients that where there's no loyalty, where they're just constantly going to be looking for something else you can provide. If that's the case, you just can't allow that. It's one thing to have a client, but it's another thing to have a bad client. So a lot of attorneys that have clients will let different clients go. And when things aren't going, when the clients are just not worth it. So you need to have clients that merit that are able to, that appreciate the work you do and aren't taking advantage of you. So that happens to law firms all the time. So law firms are always not helping. Law firms always have bad clients. So it's not that you have to be subservient to all sorts of. Okay, so here's a question. So I regret not going to a higher ranked school because my grades, it's a common question. I'm glad this person's asking this. I'm regretting not going to a higher ranked school because my grades were not as high as they should be. Now it's even more difficult for me to get into big law. I don't know how to network. My law school doesn't have many connections with big law firms. The big law firms don't come to OCI and have applied externally on their websites and never get selected. Now I'm at 2, I don't know what to do. Okay, so what? This is crazy. No. I don't know how many spots there are at the big law firms each year. Let's say there's, maybe the AML have 2,500 spots. I don't know what it is. I'm just guessing spots for first years. And then I don't even think it's that many, but say it's 2,500 spots for first years. And then there's maybe 30,000 law school graduates. So great. There's that law. So what? So you're upset that you're not part of this 8% or whatever that's able to get, and I don't even think it's 2,500. I would bet it's probably more like 1,800 or something. I don't know what it is, but the point is it's a very rarefied world. It's very difficult. You probably, maybe went to Harvard or college. I don't know, but it's just what it is. Who cares? Why would you care about going to a top law firm? Honestly, if you go to a top law firm, most of the people are going to be top students at top schools, and they're going to, frankly, a lot of them will have different skill sets than you. Some of the best personal injury attorneys, which is a great practice area, were the worst students at the worst law schools, but they were very good at what they do. But if you try to go into something, think about an example would be, and I don't want to give this example, but what if Kanye West decided to go to school to be a dentist? Is that going to work out? You want to put yourself in positions where you're much likely to be strong as opposed to not strong. So going to work at these giant law firms is very hard. You'll be competing with people that went to top colleges, that got the top scores in the LSAT, that have a very high aptitude for a certain type of practice. Why would you want to compete with those people? I'm not saying you can't compete with them later, but why would you want to, out of the gate, put yourself into competition with that? That's crazy, because most of those people are going to fail at the game anyway. So why would you want to compete with that? That would be like saying that I went to this decent high school and I got into I want to play at a Big Ten school, but I'm only getting offers at Division III college. It's just, who cares? No one should be worrying about working at a big law firm. I don't even understand why people keep feeling badly about themselves because they're not working in big law. What's the point of this? Is it so you can make a big salary and then eventually have to get another job? Or is it so you can tell people you worked in big law and feel good about yourself? I don't really understand the point. The point is to be a successful attorney. And if you want to be a successful attorney, you need to go work in a practice area that you like. You need to take the types of jobs you're able to get. You need to survey the market and see, are there opportunities for you to go to better firms? Are there opportunities for you to work to start your own firm? What are the opportunities? What can I do? What is it that I want to do? I had this experience once where it was very funny. I posted this job online looking for an attorney. Oh, no, I didn't post a job online. I actually went into the database and posted a job on BCG's site for an in-house attorney. And this guy applied, and he was number 3 in his class from a top 10 law school or top 15 law school, no, top 10 or 15 law school, and had not wanted to work in a law firm during his second summer, and then had not wanted to work in a big firm after he graduated. And frankly, didn't really care what he did. He started his own practice, and he was representing different people for different stuff and doing well. And then he saw this job that I had, and he decided he wanted to do it. But my point is that, and then he did the job for me for a while, and then he ended up quitting and going and starting his own law firm, became a very successful personal injury firm. So all I'm saying to you is that even the best students don't often want to go to law firms. Most of the students that graduate from Yale Law School do not go to law firms. They do things other than law firms. And so trying to get into a big law firm is crazy. What is the point of going someplace where the odds of failing and the odds of being unhappy are very high? Because I'm not saying that there's anything wrong going to a big law firm. Of course you should, but it's not something to feel badly about if it doesn't happen. And I don't understand why people are so upset about it. And let me just explain to you why it's so difficult. So why is it so difficult for people to get into big law firms, for law students or whatever, law students to get into big law? Here's the what's going on. So you have, I don't know how many top 15 law schools, probably 6,000 people. I don't know what it is, 6,000 people from top 10 law schools, 14 law schools, and then top law students, lots of local and regional schools applying. So all this sort of stuff. So just imagine you're a law firm and you have an opening. Are you gonna choose someone from one of these top 14 law schools? Not all, and by the way, not all of these people get jobs. So are you going to choose someone from one of these schools? Or are you going to decide to choose an average 24,000 or 20,000, whatever the number, average, 15,000, whatever the number is, 15,000 above average at average schools? It's just law of supply and demand, right? It's not, there's nothing about any of this that should surprise anyone when you really think about it. So if the law firms if there's 2,500 openings for first years at these top 100 law firms, and it might be more than 2,500, but it's not a huge number. And they've got 6,000 people from top 14 law schools, and maybe less than that, or maybe 4, but they're obviously going to be competing for these people before they're looking at these 15,000 people. Now, the point of all this is, I just want you to understand, is that the only thing that a law firm has to evaluate you on when you're in law school is where you went to law school and how you did there. So those are the only two things they have. But once you get out of law school, like, you have incredible numbers of options. Once you get experience in a certain practice area, let's say you got experience doing litigation or something in a law firm, and commercial litigation or real estate or corporate or IP, I don't know. But once you get that experience, what happens is then second years doing, let's say, commercial real estate leases. There may be, from out of all these people that graduate, these 30,000 people, there may be, 1,000 in the country, 1,000 in the country. So all of a sudden you put yourself in the position of where you're competing with fewer people for those same jobs. And then there might be 1,000 in the country, and there might be only 100 looking at one time. So then if a law firm has an opening for a commercial leasing attorney for a second year, and they want someone, there's only maybe 50 to 100 people that they could possibly get. So then all of a sudden, and then this is just nationally, right? So this is nationally. And then in a market, say you're in Cleveland, there might only be like 10 people like you. I don't know what it would be, or 5 people, 5 second years. That suddenly opens the door to opportunities. The idea, who cares if you didn't go to a top law school? Meaningless. No one cares. You get out of school, you're out more than 2 or 3 years. I've had lawyers working for me that I don't even remember where they went to law school. But no one cares. The law school is really only shows where you went to law school. But once you get into a practice area and you specialize, that's where your value comes. Your value is not where you went to law school. It becomes what you're doing. And so that's what we need to worry about. So if you're one of 5 second years doing commercial real estate leasing in Cleveland, I'm not saying you can just suddenly jump into Jones Day or something, But you certainly could take that and go to a small firm to a mid-sized firm. And if you do all at the mid-sized firm, you can go from the mid-sized firm to a bigger firm. And then if you develop a book of business and so forth, and you take that, then you can be a partner in one of the big firms like Jones Day or something. So this is what people need to do. And what most people don't do is they don't understand kind of the economics of all this. You don't try to get a job in a large law firm right out of school. That's crazy if you can't do it. So you shouldn't worry about that. You should be, if you become an expert in your practice area and you're very good at it, by the time you get into a big firm, you will know all the secrets, ways to think about things, and it will help you much more in being able to be successful. Okay, let's see, here's the next question. In my early years as an attorney, I faced challenges in quantifying the value provided clients. How can I better measure and communicate the value effectively to make sure it becomes part of my official? Okay, so there's a couple of points to this question, and I don't know, maybe you have your own clients and what's going on here, but there's two things that happen with work and then transactional side. So there's the transactional side of stuff that's important, meaning doing the work and doing good work, being the most valuable person. I'm doing good work. Doing good work. I don't know my stomach, et cetera. There's that transactional side. Then, and that's doing good work. And then there's connection. So connection means forming bonds with people, making people and feel cared about. So what people really want, this goes for people you're working for. This is for people, the clients. Really what people want more than the transactional side is they want to feel some sort of connection. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be friends with the people you're working with. That doesn't mean any of that stuff, but people need to feel some sort of connection. And that connection can happen in a lot of different ways. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination suggesting that you become more really close to people. But I used to, one of my mentors was no longer alive, was going to Chet Holmes, and he would do all this stuff, like invite clients on his boat and barbecue with them and do all this stuff to connect with them outside of the formal work he was doing. And that was very important because by connecting with those people, they became bonded to him and liked him. This is what people are looking for. This is, by the way, in the recruiting world, what people are looking for. The candidates want connection and they want to feel like they're being heard. The law firms where we work with want to feel connection. They want to work with people they feel connected with. So all of this sort of thing is very important to be able to form this connection. When you form a connection with clients, they're much more likely to use it, and then you're much more likely to have a bond with them. It's interesting when I go to parties and just like barbecues and things, and where I live in Malibu, and a lot of times when I go to them, maybe it's some like rock star or business person's house and giant home and stuff, but what I've noticed a lot of times is those people actually invite their attorneys. Their attorneys are there, and it's almost like they have this friendship. This is what attorneys do: is are able to form connections with their clients. Very important. And if you can do that, then you're going to be much more successful. Okay, so this is a question that I've answered. And this particular question, I don't know why it is, but I've been having a lot of solo practitioners and things schedule, or people with small firms schedule calls with me to talk about work and business and get advice. And I certainly have built law firms, but I can tell you what makes it successful that I've seen, but I'm not by any stretch of the imagination an expert in building a giant law firm. So could you provide some practical steps or strategies for attorneys like me to embrace the concept of throwing ourselves into our work to achieve true success, both professionally and personally? So the only thing I can say to you is that if you want to be successful at practicing law, you need to fall in love with both your work and the client, meaning you need to think about what you can do to make that client think you care about them. You need to make sure you care about your work more than anything. So there's a guy, I remember his name is John Quinn. Let's start at Quinn Emanuel. And he went into a meeting once, someone that I know was there. And the person said, "Why should I hire you?" And he said, "Because if you hire me, I will eat, sleep, and drink your case. Meaning it was everything to him, and he was very committed to it. So that's how you succeed, is you make people think you're just freaking crazy, and you'll do the best you can. And that's what people want to see. That's what you would want to see if you were trying to hire an attorney for something. You would want to see, if you had some sort of a medical condition, you would want to go to the person that had the best qualifications and seemed the most excited about it. If you were accused of some crime you didn't commit, you would want to find the best possible attorney and the one that had the most success and made you feel the best. And this is just what good professionals do. Like they're able to really care about their work and seem like they care much more than others. And they want to make sure people feel very enthusiastic about them and think that they have their back. And that's how you do it. People that don't succeed they don't have that extra burst of enthusiasm and don't care about the work. And that's what holds them back, is that inability to do that. So that's really important decision. Looking at this question here. Okay, so I'm going to read this. I'm not sure if it's a question, but it deserves some comments. Thank you for the presentation. I got a lot out of it. I'm glad you did. It's a lot if people that listen to this, I know it's a little bit long, and looks like almost everyone that started the presentation is still here, but it's a topic that a lot of people, I think, resist. So, and it's hard, but let's take a look at what this person says. Thank you for the presentation, Harrison. I got a lot of it and believe it, in fact, changed my life. I used to have this attitude and mentality when I first started out as an attorney. Then I got headhunted and doubled my salary overnight and moved to one of the top firms in a larger city. Unfortunately, the firm had a terrible relationship with associates and was very much of us versus them. I somehow got appointed to the head of the liaison committee to try to advocate on behalf of the associates for better working conditions, compensation, etc. I now see this as the worst thing I could have done and started my belief that firms are trying to exploit me. So I started to hold back. I do not really have a question. I just wanted to thank you for finally seeing what happened, how my career started to decline instead of growing by. So great point. What I like about this question and what this person's saying is that there's two things here, and I want to make sure that everyone understands how important this is. The person says the firm had a terrible relationship with associates. It very much was much versus them. So if you're in that type of position in a firm, the most important thing you can do is to be on the side of the employer and make them realize that you've got that, not in a way that you're going against the other associates, but in a way that, but in a way that you make sure the firm sees that the people you're working for, that you're putting them first, that you're not being part of this and you just don't want anything to do with it. You don't put yourself in situations where you can be part of it. So being head of the liaison committee to advocate on behalf of the associates, that's the frickin' last thing in the world you would want to do. This is the kind of stuff you run away from. Like any attorney, I just want to be very clear with you. This is the exact thing, the last frickin' thing in the world that you should be doing. Why would you want to be in a position where you're going and telling partners and so forth why everyone's upset? That's just going to associate with you. They're going to believe that you're the one that has these ideas. They are not going to like you. And that's just going to really hurt you. The other thing too is, why would you want to be on the vibration level, vibrate at different levels? Why would you want to vibrate on the level of someone that is where you're just not? Why would you want to vibrate on the level? I don't even understand. It's just very risky. So no, you don't want to be on the side of this negative sort of stuff. It's very bad. And no one wants to put themselves in a position of being us against them in a firm. And then you start trying to believe that firms are trying to exploit you and hold back. That's exactly what people do. You don't want to be on the side of negativity. You want to be on the side of positivity and building the firm up and not tearing it down, because that's all you're going to be seen as, and they're going to be mad. If you're going to the firm with negative news about them and so forth, they're going to be angry about that. And that's not good. You don't want to be in that position. All right. Yeah, that last question I thought was pretty awesome. So thank you for the person that asked that. Okay, this is another great question. This one is one of the later questions asked. I'm going to go to some of the earlier ones too. Again, one second. Okay, how can I improve my job prospects after overcoming challenges like failing the bar exam and losing the big law position? I've since passed the bar, but faced difficulties in the current market, particularly in corporate transactional practice. Any advice in turning this situation an opportunity? And how should I address it in interviews? Okay, great question. So you've failed the bar exam and lost your big law position. By the way, extremely common. This happens to tons of people each year. And you are not alone. I see resumes like this multiple times a day, meaning people applying to BCG. I see this all day, every day. This is very common. People fail at once, they fail at twice, they fail 3 times, 4 times, whatever. And these are people in big law firms. By the way, anybody that's getting ready to take the test or going to take it, you're still in law school, you should treat it like the most freaking important thing in the world and give everything you got to it. A lot of times people that went to really good law schools assume that because they went to a good law school, they're automatically going to do very well, and they fail. I've seen people from Yale and Stanford fail 4 or 5 times in California. It's crazy. So you need to study very hard. It's definitely not an IQ test. It's a memorization test. Can you take the bar? So everyone just remember that advice. No one's going to tell you that, but you need to study it regardless of who you are, like your life depends on it. So this person failed the bar exam and then lost their big law position, passed the bar, but now wants to work in corporate transactional law. Okay, so here's the deal. So corporate transactional law is working for companies, for law firms that work for companies, expecting the very best talent. That's what's going on. So that's the first thing you need to understand. So companies, so that's why most, and then the larger the company, the better talent the law firm must have. So what does that mean? So large companies that if you want to work with them doing corporate transactional work, like you were doing when you were working at a big firm before you failed the bar exam, they have general counsels and they will investigate the attorneys working on their matter. They will check the date you were admitted to the bar and all that kind of stuff. And if it's weird then they're going to not like that. And the other thing is corporate is very slow right now. Very slow. People are getting laid off. What does that mean? That means that people that are employed are better candidates than people that are unemployed, right? And people that passed the bar are better candidates, better than those that didn't. So that's right. You're basically saying that you failed the bar exam and you lost a job, and you're in a very competitive practice here where people are getting laid off. And obviously those laid off people are trying to find jobs. They didn't maybe fail the bar exam, or that law firms that are hiring would prefer to hire people that are currently employed because there's no question about their work than those are employed. Yes, you're going to face a lot of difficulties. So what do you do? And again, there's a solution. What do you do? What do you do when everything seems when everything seems hopeless? And it's very easy, by the way. It's very easy to fix this problem. So let me do something fun here. Give me 1 second. I am going to open and I'm going to show you in our database, a BCG, what I would do if I were you. And I'm going to do this just to benefit you, to show you that there's always hope. There's a lot of hope, by the way. Just give me 1 second. I want to make sure I open the right candidate search. I'm doing a screen where I don't want to show any confidential information. And when I'm done this, then I'm going to show you all this information. And I'm going to show you why your situation is far from scary. Okay, so here we're looking at these are sample accounts. These are not real accounts at BCG. So this is an example of someone at a firm called Gunderson Detmer that's supposedly doing venture capital, all these different things. And let's pretend that this person lost their job. They're looking for a job, or they're in New York and Los Angeles. So they're looking for positions in all these sorts of places. And I hope you can see this. We've selected corporate, private equity, venture capital. And so you have to also think about what are the practice areas that I would be interested in? What in practice here, if I'm doing corporate and private equity, what else could I possibly put in there? So I would actually say, if I was you, I would look also probably at general corporate. Like you could probably, if you want to work in a smaller market or something, you would want to think about general corporate. And let me just, for everyone that's on this call, I'm going to start talking about things that may seem a little bit difficult to understand at first, but I'm going to just show you a little bit about how to find jobs in the legal market, regardless of your situation, and what I would do with your candidacy if I was your recruiter. Now, the tools I'm showing you are things you could probably figure out on your own, but no, you couldn't. But I'm going to show you how much opportunity there is. So we're going to call this person now general corporate. Okay, so we're going to call them that. The person is admitted in California and also New York. Okay, so let's just say those are the markets that they're interested in. And now the person, let's say they've lost their job. Let's just pretend, let me see, out of this candidate, out of the data, let's go their dates of employment. Let's just pretend that they lost their job. So let's change this. I don't know how this, December 2021 to September of 2023. I'm putting this in there just for fun. Okay, September of 2023. This person has lost their frickin' job. They can't get a job, and they're very worried about it because maybe they failed the bar exam. Who knows? But this person is out of a job. So the first mistake that this person is probably making is they're only looking at big firms. So here's what is a big firm. A big firm would be, these are current active jobs for this person. So they would look at, and I'm not even explaining to you what these ranks mean, but they're looking at firms that are, the 4 and 5 firms are like the largest firms that there are. So they're looking only at these positions at these kind of firms like Davis Wright and Norton Rose and Munger Tolles. None of these firms, by the way, no one's going to hire someone that's unemployed because they don't have to. They're going to pay the most. They're going to get applicants from every other and this is a perfect job for this person, M&A and private equity, but they're going to be getting jobs from people that are employed. They've got plenty of people to draw from, and they're just going to be getting jobs from all those sorts of people. There's no reason for them to hire someone that's unemployed. So the first thing that this person should be doing, I'm just going to show you just right off the bat, is they should be applying to smaller to mid-sized firms, which they're not going to. But if they were to, again, this is a sample account, you would see all these firms. Now, a lot of these are job orders. I mean, the firm has affirmatively reached out to us and said, we really need someone like this, and blah, blah, blah. And so these are the firms that the person should be applying to, but they're not. So these are just openings. And they may have a more difficult time getting jobs in these firms because they're unemployed. But if they apply to firms that aren't quite as good as where they're at, they're going to have far more luck. So you don't necessarily apply to the best firms, you apply to other firms. Now, these are jobs that we're recruiting for. This is a lot of jobs, but just think about all the positions there are. You go to, for example, Law Crossing, which is one of our sites, and there's all these positions on there. The reason there's only these firms is that because if there's an overlap between what's on BCG, but you can see all the jobs on BCG and Law Crossing. I don't understand why everyone's not on the site, and because it's giving you all the positions you can find on Law Crossing, BCG, most of them, at least if they're not exclusive to us, but that's very helpful. This particular firm is looking for full circle business law. I have no idea what that is, but that's a potential. So say this person's been unemployed for September, so they've been unemployed now for 3.5 months. They need to start looking for more jobs. They need to start looking for jobs in more locations. So just in their own area, I'm going to show you here. This really isn't that important for you to understand, but these are firms that have interviewed people just like them recently in BCG. So this is what we do. And these are candidate numbers, but these are people that have interviewed people recently just like them. So they need to start applying, and meaning these are smaller to mid-sized firms, meaning these people should be doing everything they possibly can to apply to all the firms that potentially could match them. There's all sorts of lists. I'll just show you this, where this person could apply to. And I'm just showing you why there's no hope, why there's tons of hope. These 745 firms in Los Angeles, Brooklyn, and West Hollywood that do corporate work. So 745 firms, like this is 745 places that the person could apply to. This is insane. There are so many frickin' opportunities for an unemployed corporate attorney. Do you think that it's impossible for you to not get an interview if you were to apply to all these firms? It's absolutely astonishing how many firms there are that you can apply to. It blows my mind. Like, there are so many frickin' opportunities. Now, these are recommended firms. These are firms that are like, oh, they're on U.S. News, Vol Chambers, BCG, they're giving us job orders, whatever. We've placed people that are interviewed, but there are so many opportunities. It's just insane. Now, these are recommended firms. These are special firms that are on like special lists and so forth of places you can apply to. What does that mean? It means that they've interviewed our people, that they're ranked on different publications and so forth. There's just a lot of opportunity. Now, let me show you something even more exciting, because this is freaking ridiculous. Let me see this person here. Make you understand the amount of opportunities that we have for people on BCG. Let me just corporate general. So here you look at the jobs and the contacts and the preferred location. These aren't even unrecommended firms. These are just firms that do this kind of work. Look how many firms that we have that have interviewed our people and so forth on this. This is an incredible number of people. This is 181 places. That's just in Los Angeles. This is just Los Angeles. I wanted places that we could send the person to in Los Angeles that do this kind of work. Then you want to go in their area if they're interested, like New York and so forth. Then you get 1,025. These are places where we could send a BCG candidate that firms that we work with. This is insane. So our first list, what did we get? We got 40 or 50 jobs, right? And then we saw firms that we recommend highly. Then I showed you firms on a recommended list, meaning firms that are noted for their practice area. You got 750. Then you got 180 in Los Angeles and 1,025 in New York. So right there, I've found for this particular person that could be a corporate attorney over 1,500, 2,000 places to apply to. Do you think that someone that, even if they failed the bar, could not get a job at all those places if they were to apply to them? And that's what you need to do. If you want to be a good attorney, like you need to represent yourself and you need to go out and find all these opportunities. That's what I do for my candidates. No one does anything like this, but I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just showing you that when you use all the resources at your disposal, which is you do all the research you can, you find out the list you find out the people that could possibly hire you, you can get thousands of people. It's just crazy. Let me just show you one other thing here. And before I completely blow your mind, this person says, oh, I want to work in Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles is a great place. I'm from Los Angeles, blah, blah, blah. If you really want a freaking job and you're admitted to the California bar, no, you just go all out. You just say, hey, I'm admitted in California, right? I'm going to go and instead of just looking at Los Angeles, I'm going to look on all of California, right? I'm looking freaking California. Let me look in California because I really need a job. And also let me look in the entire state of New York because I really need a job. I don't want to sit around unemployed because I know if I sit around unemployed, it's going to be very hard for me to keep working. So I'm going to look at the entire state of California and I'm going to look at the entire state of New York. So here you go. So when we do that, we suddenly end up with how many firms? Look at this. These are firms with jobs. And you suddenly end up with all these jobs. And these are just firms with jobs matching this person's experience level. You get hundreds. I can't even freaking fathom this. If you look at the whole state, then you go to this thing with recommended firms. And the reason I'm being so dramatic about this is I'm just showing everyone that no matter who the freaking person is, 962 recommended firms, like firms on all these lists, chambers and things. You get 1,000 firms there if you do all of California. Then you do the same search where you go firms in California and you get 235. So I'm just telling everyone, and the reason I'm going so overboard here and just so dramatic about all this is that it doesn't matter what happens to you. You're not a victim. There's plenty of places for you to go. It's not difficult. You just need to find people that are willing to hire you. And I can guarantee you that, and again, I'm not telling you that you need to apply to all these places on your own, but you should easily be able to research all the law firms in California that do corporate related work. You should be able to find that. That's not the end of the world. You should be able to find that information. And if you're able to find that information, then you can apply to them because no one else is going to be. Look at some of these places. Holster, Embrace, and Marcus. I don't know what the heck this thing is, this firm, but let's see here. It's a little firm, but people just don't research. It looks nice. It's in Santa Barbara. Hell yeah. Look at that. That's great. Who wouldn't want to work there? Come on. That's great. Wow. Yeah. If I was an attorney, I would be very enthusiastic. Look at these people. They're very happy, right? They're in Santa Barbara and Peter Candy, and what a cool name. But anyway, so the point is there's plenty of places for anyone to work. And I don't like seeing people not believe that there's not places they can work. Nothing is hopeless. It's actually freaking, the world is wide open. And these firms that you would be applying to, I guarantee you that they are not receiving people like you all the time that went to this firm in Santa Barbara. There's so many freaking opportunities out there. It's just ridiculous. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because if you give up and you don't research all these firms and find places to apply to, you're just going to be a victim. And you have to look at yourself as like your own law client. If you're your own law client, you're not going to sit back and allow the market to beat you up. You're going to figure out how to make the most of this. And that's it. So you represent yourself. You do whatever you can to get yourself off. Let me see. Okay, so there's some questions here. Any advice in terms of, sorry. And by the way, this piece of advice I just gave, how to find jobs and number of opportunities out there, it should be completely obvious to you of all the things you can do if you want to do very well. Okay, so what are my chances of getting a law clerk position at a law firm while I study for the bar the 5th time? Your chances of getting a law clerk position at a law firm when you study that 5th time are exceptional. Like, why? Why wouldn't you be able to get a position as a law clerk, paid or unpaid? Someone will, if you're willing to do work for someone and they need help, they will probably, or there's no reason for them to hire you. So say you want to do workers' compensation law, I don't know why I'm unable. Anyway, do a Google search for attorneys in whatever geographic area you are and ask and approach them and tell them you would want to work for them, if they have any law clerk positions, say I'm an unadmitted attorney. So that's all you need to say. So it's not very hard. I'm interested. Oh, this is crazy. Okay, so this person says here, sorry, I'm not being crazy. I'm interested in corporate law and M&A work in major law firms. There are 3 or 4 firms in Columbus that I really want to get into that work in major. But so what do? You don't work at them. So I don't know. I'm interested in corporate law, M&A work in major firms. Therefore, there are only 3 to 4 firms in Columbus that I really want to go to get major deal work experience. The summer classes are full. What do I do? Nothing. You can't work there. Who cares? No. I don't know what your background is, but that just because you can't work there doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. I got out of law school. I went to University of Virginia. I was in law review. I had grades. I worked at a big New York City law firm my first summer. Then I went to clerk for a federal judge in Bay City, which is like an hour and a half from Detroit. And when I got done with the clerkship, I wanted to work at one of 5 law firms in Detroit. And there was essentially, at that time, there was a huge legal recession. I didn't really have many options to work there, but not only was there a legal recession, but it was Detroit and the market there was just cratering, the auto industry and anyways, there were 4 or 5 firms I could work with there. I did not have a great reception. I got screening type interviews with them. They were nice, but I didn't really get a great reception at these firms. Nothing really came of it. And except for one or 2 firms. But the point is that just because you're not getting a good reception at a few firms doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. All you need to do, if you want to stay in this Columbus, which I would not recommend, I would recommend looking in as many geographic areas as you possibly can, all over Ohio, but you go to work at a firm that represents smaller clients. That's it. You learn how to be a corporate attorney there, and then you eventually move up to a larger firm. And I can tell you, by the way, this is especially true for corporate attorney. If you start at a small firm as a corporate attorney, there are very few attorneys that stay committed to being corporate attorneys. You can move to a larger firm as a corporate attorney later. That's it. So it's really not that hard. You can, without too much difficulty, move to larger and larger firms as a corporate attorney. That's it. So you're often also better off starting at a smaller firm because they tend to be more recession proof. They're not as dependent on getting major deal flow from large companies. So that's my advice to you. I don't think just because you can get a job at one of these larger firms is not anything that you should worry about at all. Okay, I wanted to thank everyone for being on this webinar this week. I did have a couple of real brief things that I wanted to cover in addition to this material, just the people that are currently on this webinar and have stuck it out, which it hasn't been that long of a webinar, but I did want to provide you some value right away. This is the 2024 State of the Law Firm Legal Market Report. You can find it by Googling this, or it's not that hard to find online. But what this does is it goes through and it ranks all of the law firms in the country and are the different law firms of different sizes. And last year at BCG, we represented 24,000 candidates to 34,000 or 35,000 firms, meaning this shows you what happened with these submissions, meaning the most popular practice area was in terms of people getting interviews, was product liability plaintiffs, and it goes down from there. So this is very good information because however you're trying to position your legal career, these types of interesting. This sort of information is very helpful to helping you decide where to work and what practice areas to go into. So a lot of times the busiest practice areas, like in medical malpractice defense, are not things that people would normally think of, or divorce law and so forth. Putting your career in different areas where you believe you're more likely to be successful is very smart. So you try to go into practice areas that are busy. So this person, for example, saying they want to work in big law, working for companies doing corporate law. Okay, so this is big law right here, 4 to 5. And so let's look at where corporate is. So corporate general is not at the top, it's below litigation. And then as you start getting into corporate M&A, it's even farther down. So you in corporate private equity farther down. So you get a sense of this. These are the ones that are ranked, but securities and capital markets is one of the slowest. All these are some of the slowest. Some of the slowest practice areas are corporate. Fewer people are getting positions, whereas when you do things like ERISA or healthcare, like there's a lot going on. So it's just important to understand all of this information, because the better you understand it and where you're putting your time, the better off you're going to do. And very important stuff. Give me one more second. Okay, so I think that's it for questions. I certainly appreciate everyone being on the webinar this week. I think if you got this material and you understood what I'm saying, I think it could definitely change the direction of your career permanently and the direction of your life. Thank you for being on this webinar. I will next week, hopefully we'll have a very good topic as well. And thank you.